going on? What's going on? Damn! It's a beautiful day today. Let's talk some boxing though. Man, it's Terrence Crawford again. Terrence Crawford seems to be the center of the boxing world. Well, his decision making seems to be kind of the center of the boxing world in the last week. And we all know about with the Gary Russell situation, where I guess Al Heyman and them had contacted Top Rank about him fighting Gary Russell. And I guess that's not going to happen. And then on top of that, Sean Porter just came out, and he said he had actually contacted, after they said that they were going to talk about fighting each other's next, he said he contacted Terrence Crawford, and what Terrence Crawford said was that at this particular time he can't fight Sean Porter because he has other plans that are being lined up right now. So that also was a no-go. And we all know Keith Thurman also has been talking about wanting to fight fighting Terrence Crawford. And I guess they contacted Bob Arum, and they put out terms that they're looking for right now. And Bob Arum basically said, hell no way. He said basically the amount of money that they're asking for is too much, and that post-pandemic is just not feasible. And that was the end of it. I guess they didn't try to negotiate with them. They didn't try to come up with a particular number that might work, or nothing. So, and because of that, basically, these being multiple fighters that that people would want to see someone like a Terrence Crawford fight against, he's been kind of getting reamed, I guess you could say, on social media, online. Bomac and them all said that, Keith Thurman brings nothing to the table, that he lost a lot of luster since his last fight, which I don't understand how he would have lost a lot of luster due to the fact that he barely lost that fight. And he still has a huge name. Sean Porter lost to Earl Spence, but didn't lose any luster. If he had fought Earl Spence next, that would have been a 350,000 plus pay-per-view. If Terrence Crawford had fought Sean Porter next, and they promoted their pay-per-view the way that Fox does it, it's a 300,000 plus pay-per-view. Period. But they decided that those are routes that they don't want to go to. And Bomac also said that when it comes to even a Kell Brook, that they're not even looking at that fight. But Bob Arum's still talking about wanting to get that fight set up. So that might be his next opponent. But even in that situation, it's nowhere near a big a fight as if he had faced Keith Thurman. And Bomac also has come out today and said that if Keith Thurman really wanted to fight Terrence Crawford, that he would have sent a check, he would send a contract out there with a big fat check, with a boatload of money, but that Keith Thurman doesn't have a promoter, and that Al Heyman isn't putting up the money, isn't going to put up any money for any big fights. What I'm saying? That people are just hating on Terrence Crawford, which is something that's really weird to hear somebody say, just due to the fact that if anybody knows about boxing, especially if they're big time boxing fans, that Al Heyman is known for putting up the money. This is a man that's been part of some of the biggest fights in the history of boxing. This is the same guy that Top Rank Bob Arum and Oscar De La Hoya took to court because supposedly, quote, he's paying his fighters too much money. That's what Bob Arum said. He's paying the fighters an insane amount of money. And he was basically pushing up what you had to pay all the rest of these other fighters in order to retain them. That's what they're complaining about. So they're trying to put a stop to it, and that they were hiding money, because we all know PBC, you'll get your quote, fight check, but then might be your bonuses, what you sign on for, what you get as a promoter, all that other stuff ends up being different. Even somebody like Charlo, who's fighting in this next fight, a lot of TV rights when it comes to all the visual, the footages and everything like that, they're going to be getting from Charlo's, photographer. They're getting a lot of images from him, a lot of videos from him. So Charlo's going to get a fat check from that, and his photographer's going to get a fat check straight from Showtime. So they work things like that into the contracts. A lot of the perks, the money that the promoters usually get, with that side, the fighters actually get a portion of that as well. And that's why they live the way that they are. Their finances are on the levels that they are. Substantially higher than other people. who might be the same level type fights, but, so he said that, so we all know this, but we also know that Al Haymon, even if you look at now, you don't even have to look at the past. You can look right now in the last year or so. You're looking at Manny Pacquiao versus Adrian Broner, Manny Pacquiao versus Keith Thurman. They couldn't pay Manny Pacquiao the $20 million he wanted, Bob Arum and them. But as soon as Manny Pacquiao signed to Al Haymon, he got that $20 million versus Broner. He got that $20 million versus Thurman. He got Mikey Garcia versus Earl Spence done. He got Sean Porter versus Earl Spence done. He got Earl Spence versus Danny Garcia done, which all big fights. He got Rosario versus Charlo done, or Charlo Rosario versus Harrison done. I guess a lot of the big fights that Ortiz versus Deontay Wilder done twice. So big money fights where like Deontay Wilder was guaranteed $20 million for a fight on regular Showtime. He got him guaranteed $20 million for a fight on regular Showtime versus Dominic Brazil, and got him paid 20 plus when he fought against Ortiz for the second time. So to say that he doesn't put up money, whatever, it just sounds type of weird. And I'm sure he would put up the money, but obviously if you put up the funds, you're gonna have to fight on Fox. So the thing is that, is Terrence Crawford willing to take a B-side role? Is he willing to be a B-side, especially if he's putting up a substantial amount of money? They're gonna want that as a 50-50, just like they did with Deontay Wilder. Like, Anthony Joshua, all right, you want 50 million? Here's 50 million. It's gonna be 50-50, and then, once it passes a certain amount of money, we're gonna split the pay-per-view 50-50 as well. And then on the rematch, we're going to guarantee $30 million, and it's going to be 50-50 again after that. Do you want him to do something like that? Because if that's the case, then Terrence Crawford and his team should, contact Al Haymon again and be like, "Now we can't do the number that you're requesting. We can't do anything near that. But what we can do, if you want to, is like, hey, you give us that number, and we'll send Terrence Crawford over to Fox, and he can fight on Fox." That's available to you. You can do that. And I'm very sure that, PBC and Al Haymon will be 100% willing to do that. I'm sure they'd be willing to 100% be willing to do that when it comes to a Sean Porter fight. I'm sure they'd be willing to 100% be willing to do that if it comes to a Keith Thurman fight. But because they're not, you're investing money, but then you're getting something out of it. The content leading up to the fight is going to bring in a lot of viewership on social media. It's going to bring in a lot of viewership when it comes to whatever, the shows that they do before the fight on regular Fox. Is going to bring in money. And obviously the fight itself is going to bring in those pay-per-view bouts, because they know how to do pay-per-views. They know how to promote pay-per-views. He also got Santa Cruz versus Gervonta Tank Davis done as well. Most of the big fights that are coming up, most of the big fights that people are going to be talking about are PBC fights with Al Haymon fighters. That's most of the fights that people are going to be talking about. Most of the fighters that even Terrence Crawford is going to be talks about are those PBC fighters. And if supposedly, the man doesn't have the money, he can't put the money up, and there's no promoter, then there's no point of you talking about any of the PBC fighters then. There's zero point of you talking about any of the PBC fighters, because then going by that philosophy, none of those fights can be done, including Earl Spence, including Manny Pacquiao, because yes, he is still a PBC fighter. He still has at least one more fight under PBC, and Al Haymon. You might as well stop talking about all of them then, if that's the case. I'm not sure exactly what that team is doing. I'm not sure exactly what their plan is. Hey, maybe somehow they got a Manny Pacquiao fight done. Maybe they got something like that done. It's a maybe it's a possibility. If not, then I don't see what could be as big as that fight as a Keith Thurman fight. And what's crazy about him saying that Keith Thurman's not a big fight is like this. Check this out. First, he said Manny Pacquiao was asking too much money. Al Haymon got him that money versus Adrian Broner and versus Keith Thurman. and they did great on pay-per-view on both those fights. Especially the Keith Thurman one, where they did, what, 600,000-700,000 pay-per-views. They did great on that fight, right? A fight that should have been Terrence Crawford's. You know, they said, oh, Mikey, you know what I'm saying, it's not worth it. It's not worth negotiating with him. When it came to Mikey and them and Earl Spence did, what, 300,000 plus pay-per-views? They did great with that as well. After that, they said, oh, you know, Sean Porter, he's not worth anything. He doesn't bring anything to the table. Spence fights him, they do over 300,000 pay-per-views. Now you're saying Keith Thurman's not worth anything. It's not worth anything. You know what's going to happen? This is what's going to happen. Keith Thurman's going to fight one fight, right? One fight, maybe two fights. He might fight someone like a Ugas or something of that nature. He might get a tuna fight and fight a Ugas, or he might go straight to like a Ugas fight, right? Beat a Ugas fight, and guess who he's going to fight after that? He's going to end up fighting Earl Spence in a pay-per-view. And there's going to be another fighter that supposedly wasn't worth anything, that supposedly doesn't bring anything to the table, that then Earl Spence is going to end up fighting and making an absorbent amount of money off of, where all the talk and all the hype and all the focus is going to be on that fight. It's going to be on that fight. You know? It's getting hard to defend this man at this point. It's getting very difficult. That PBC fighters don't want to fight him and things of that nature, it's at this point been cleared, been proven to not be the case. And I'm not sure what their plans are. Hey, maybe they could pop up with a plan that she's like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. And you could be like, okay, because again, Kell Brook ain't it. Because Keith Thurman's a bigger fight than a Kell Brook fight. Substantially bigger than a Kell Brook fight. Okay, this man's just coming off a good showing against Manny Pacquiao in a pay-per-view that did, what, 700,000 pay-per-views. So, no, Kell Brook's not on that space or level. But, again, we'll see exactly what he has planned, and see if it's something where we sit here and we shake our heads like we don't know what the hell this guy is doing, but this ain't working. Or maybe we're like, oh, okay, all right, let's go. Let's mother effing go. And hopefully that's what it is. But for now, like, subscribe, share. I'm out.